Hello everyone. In today's video, I will be teaching you guys how to use a battle axe for soloing group content such as group dungeons or static zones. Now let us get into the build and see what items we are using for this set. Now we are using a Spectre hood, Hellion jacket, Guardian boots, Muisak, Limhurst cape, and of course a battle axe. We are using the default spell on all items with balanced mind passive on leather, the toughness passive on the guardian boots. We are using the second Q, the third W, not the third, the last W, and the last passive. So let's look at how to use these spells in combat. And before that, we are also using a roast pork and an invisibility potion. So let's get into it. Now the Q spell is an AoE attack that applies dots to everything that's in the range. Now it has two fields of range, I believe. Yeah, if the target is close to you, you deal low damage, but if the target is a little further away, you deal high damage. Now let's try if I can demonstrate that. Uh, Not here, maybe a little closer here. Not there yet. Okay, let's check this from here. No, it's not working. Alright, I can probably demonstrate it on these dummies, maybe because they're all spaced awkwardly. But basically, if the mob is 2 meters away from you or 2 meters from you, you deal 300 damage, and if it's 5 meters from you, you deal 400 damage. Now, you don't have to worry about the distance very much, just spam this Q spell, it's easy. But if you want to be really optimal and do the highest DPS possible, you want to use this Q spell. This does more damage than the second Q, but this is a skill shot and it feels really awkward to use if you're not used to it. So pick whichever one you like. Now for bosses, you can either use any of the spells here. The first Q deals the highest DPS for single target damage, I believe. So switching over to the first Q might be better. Now as for the W slots, this one is the best. If you don't have this unlocked, you can use this. This is also quite good. The passive is based on your preference. It does not matter what you use. I like the extra damage, so I'm taking this one. Okay, now let's look at the Hellion jacket. Hellion jacket is an aura that builds up around you. Now everything in this radius takes damage from the Hellion jacket, and 50% of the damage will be reflected back to you as healing. Now this used to be 100% of the damage reflected back to you as healing, but they nerfed it, so it's not as good now. But also we have a Spectre hood. With the Spectre hood, we can instantly remove the cooldown of your armor to 0. So use it right after you use the Hellion to get the maximum effect out of this. The Giant is a simple spell. It doubles your health, and if all the damage you take during this giant duration is cut in half. Now this also has a drawback. When you are a giant, you should not use any healing, because the healing you receive when you are a giant is also cut in half. So keep that in mind while you are using the giant spell. If you don't want to use this spell, or if you have really high tier gear like this, you can also use a leather boots with the refreshing sprint spell on them that reduces your cooldowns by not that much, but it's good, it helps. The leather boots are really nice if you want to increase your DPS. So let's see how much it reduces. So if you're using a tier 8 boots, it will reduce your cooldown by 2.5 seconds. You can tell how much the cooldown is reduced, because if you look at the cooldown of the leather boots, it says it's 32.5, right? They add 2.5 seconds to the 32.5 to compensate for the cooldown reduction. So if you have a 30-second cooldown spell, uh, what do we have? Like this, or this, it will be reduced by 3 seconds or 4 seconds, something like that. So it's not that much. You can use that, but it's a preference thing. Use the refreshing sprint if you prefer more damage. Use the guardian if you want it to be more defensive. Right, guys, that's it for the explanation of the build. Now let's go to the clip where I actually use this build in dungeons. I have some bosses, so yeah, we'll see how this build goes while fighting the boss. Alright, we are at the dungeon. Now let's go in. So let's discuss some pros and cons of using a battle axe over a shadow caller. Now, because you are using a battle axe, you are a melee player. That's definitely a con because you can't kite mobs as well as you can with a ranged weapon like a shadow caller. And another really big con of it is that you can only heal off one mob at a time. So that extremely limits your ability to self-sustain, which means you can't use a stalker jacket. Now we know how good stalker jacket is for soloing group dungeons from our previous videos. So yeah, that's a big con of using a battle axe. You lose out on a lot of damage and a lot of healing. But the single pro that it has over a shadow collar is its price. It is ridiculously cheap. A shadow collar will cost you upwards of 15 to 20 million, while this is only 3 million. And it still works. So if you are looking to do group dungeons on a budget, this is definitely good. Okay, we are at a really tough boss. This boss hits really hard at the start of the round with the auto attacks. So let's see if this build is good to clear this boss. Now we do have a mercenary jacket in case as a backup. We'll use that if the Hellion proves insufficient. We barely dodged that. So you have to use all of your spells as they are off cooldown. You can't be stingy with saving your spells when you are fighting a boss. I did switch to the first Q spell, but yeah, you can stay on the other Qs if you wish, but this is more comfortable for me. And this also has higher DPS for a single target. I just tanked that hit because I was on giant form. Right. Combo the W spell with your Hellion for extra heals. Use the E. I refreshed the Hellion jacket. But we are on a problem here because this build is very energy hungry and we are run out of energy. Let's see what happens. I will use my energy for the Hellion instead of my damage spells because I could sustain myself for a little longer. Okay. Let's finish him off with the E spell. And down it goes. Right. So let's see how much loot we get from this. 250k. Right, not bad. So this build is definitely viable. You don't need the mercenary jacket unless you're fighting a really tough boss. But that depends on whether or not you can use a different build like a shadow collar or a druidic staff for those bosses. You can kill most bosses with this set, I think. Okay, we have another big pull over here. Let's see if this build can handle it. And this is a big pull, but it's fairly easy. These are all trash mobs. They'll die one shot easily. Yeah, it definitely works. It's nice. We might not need the Guardian boots. Instead of the Guardian, you could use Shoes of Tenacity or any other leather boots for the refreshing sprint. I've seen a lot of people use leather boots instead of the Guardian, so that might be a viable option too. I'll just skip these guys. Okay, so we are at the blue chest here. The boss fight was not that hard, but it just dragged on for a little bit. Okay, we are at the final boss of the dungeon, and this is a tough boss for a solo. So let's see if we can do this with the Hellion jacket. If not, we'll swap to the mercenary jacket. I mean, if we can do this boss with the mercenary, you don't even need the. Oh, sorry, I misspoke that. I meant if you can do this with the Hellion, you don't need the mercenary. You can do all bosses with the Hellion. This boss is so annoying. He has a healing debuff that is constantly around him. Let's wait for 2 seconds. Nah, we can do this. Right, let's disappear for a bit. This is a bit dangerous because I don't have any invisibility potions, and this will give me a repair bill if I don't kill him. Maybe I need to use the second Q because you don't have to be in the melee range for it. Right, let's try with that. Open with the W. How long is it? Oh, okay, that's not a time limited for now. Yeah, screw this guy. We can do this. I could definitely kill this guy with a shadow collar. I killed him many times, but with this weapon, it's just not possible. That is another con of using a melee weapon. That guy has a constant aura that's around him that suppresses your healing by a lot. So you can't sustain yourself using these spells. That's a waste of time. So yeah, if you can't buy a shadow collar, battle axe will work for most cases, but it's just not as reliable as a shadow collar. Okay, so after skipping that final boss, we ended up with 485k in loot. That's really good because these two were just drops from random mobs. These are not chest loot. So really nice loot from the dungeon there. But loot is not the point of this video. Now let's discuss about the build itself and see why you should or should not use it. So in many ways that dungeon was the perfect example of this build's strengths and weaknesses. This build is really good against fighting hard hitting mobs. Some of the really hard hitting mobs can be killed with this build in the Hellion jacket, and Shadowcaller can do it that easily because the E has a longer cooldown and heals you for less health when you're facing a single target. So the battle axe is great for single target damage and single target sustain, but the cons of battle axe are its range on the Q and W spell. It being a melee weapon is a big drawback for me. So as you saw, the boss we just skipped, that boss is easy to kill if you're using a Hellion jacket with your shadow collar, as you can just kite him infinitely without getting close to his heal reduction aura. Since you're a melee player playing a battle axe, you can't damage him when you're not in the melee range, and he can just keep throwing his sickles at you to hit you. That just messes you up. So it doesn't matter if you're using a Hellion or a mercenary, you can't kill that boss with a battle axe. Now I don't know for sure, but I'm not an expert on battle axe. This is just my take on it. If some of you are experienced playing battle axe and if I have said anything that's wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments, and yeah, I will try to address them in the next video. So yeah, that's it for today's video, guys. See you guys in the next one. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.